human civilization is a history of understanding, measuring, and acting on risk. If I left the cave one morning, 10,000 years ago, and the evening I didn't come back because I went right rather than left, you would probably know that I was dead. I mismeasured risk, and I acted on rather insufficient knowledge wrongly. If only a couple of 100 years ago I was entrepreneurial and told my wife, why don't we open a tavern? It could be incredibly good. And it turned out that I made the wrong decision and we had to close the tavern, leaving debts unpaid. We would have ended up in debtor's prison, reduced in abject poverty, probably dying there. Initially, very slowly, imperceptibly, and then suddenly, as you have learned during these 2 days, our exponential understanding of how to measure and act on risk changed so dramatically that actually today we have all new areas of the world and ways of acting that are celebrating the ways that we evolve solutions to our problems. And we create value. Value that initially is very concrete. Value that gets more and more abstract. Value that drives our understanding not only of how to store it, how to exchange it, but how to build ever more sophisticated business models. And how these business models are intermediating, initially in a very linear understanding, going from inputs to outputs, and a somewhat elementary way that we are looking at the organization, centralized and hierarchical, with the assumption that those on the very top have all the answers, and with the assumption that those at the bottom only have to obey. But also our way of looking at business model is evolving. And we have come to understand that rather than the linear picture that you saw before, they could be more usefully represented and implemented as platforms and networks. So that when you are participating in these platforms, you can take advantage of the infrastructure of the network that drives your business forward. And how we are looking at the business models and the way that these business models are conceptualized and are represented and are re-evaluated so that they correspond better and better to the updated conditions in our economic environment is very naturally leading towards new types of organizations that are decentralized. And these decentralized organizations have the opportunity of facing the market to prove that they can outcompete the previous generations. If this is true, then we will actually see in independent segments of the economy the same happening over and over again. And indeed, this is the case. For example, solar energy is a decentralized source. Digital manufacturing is a decentralized way of building physical objects. Hydroponics and indoor gardening is a decentralized way of cultivating food. Personalized health, peer-to-peer learning. These are all examples of uncorrelated sectors of the economy that are going in the same direction based on the same principles. That is why, for people who are observing and understanding these trends like you, the fact that blockchain is emerging as a very powerful force is not a surprise. It is not a fad. It is part of a profound socio-economic phase transformation that is driving society forward in an unstoppable manner. And once we understand that, we have to understand how we can prepare our corporations, our communities, to move ahead with this unstoppable change. Full disclosure, many of the examples that you will see are companies where I'm an investor and an advisor. The Sun Exchange, for example, allows you to take advantage of solar energy in the best places on the planet. You don't have the excuse anymore, oh, my house, the roof is oriented to the north, I can't use solar energy. You can own solar panels in Africa and stream the yield of those solar cells and solar panels through a blockchain transaction directly in your digital wallet. You can be in Norway, where it's dark 6 months out of the year, and you will still reap the benefits of this profound transformation. Investing in international commercial real estate used to be so complex and so expensive that only the richest family offices and private equity funds could afford to do it. Today, with Wealth Migrate, starting with $1,000, anybody can participate in the same opportunities. Leveraging our DNA is something that promises personalized cures for some of the most important diseases. But it is also fraught with privacy issues. That is why this project is using blockchain technology to design a platform where pharmaceutical companies, research institutions can take advantage of the pool of information and knowledge that tens of millions of people provide through their DNA data. Artificial intelligence is an extremely powerful technology that should not be the exclusive purvey of the richest corporations. However, it is difficult and complicated to collect data. That is why this company provides a blockchain-based incentive platform that enables anybody to build synthetic data sets with which they can train their neural networks and provide a democratized access available to everybody and anybody to AI solutions. Governance and the ability to resolve disputes join new topologies of sovereignty is now possible on the blockchain as well. And just last week, after a full year of testing, Walmart actually announced that starting next year, it will require its suppliers of food to use a blockchain platform in order to be able to completely trace the provenance of what is being sold in its stores. My own company is providing a platform in order to enable anybody to learn 21st century life design skills that are incentivized and made actionable through the tokens of the projects that you've seen before, intertwining and interrelating these initiatives in order to provide a profound social impact. Because these new organizations are not being born blind, these organizations are being born aware and self-aware of how their impact must be empowering and emancipating. The society of the future must provide dignity and sustainable communities that everybody can feel they are part of. The world is very complex, and decoding this complexity is something that falls on each of us, on each individual, as we are the leaders of our lives. Even though we are assuming that we can delegate some of this decision-making to organizations that are led by people who we say are infallible by law, because they are the regulators. They know. They are absolutely sure what are the implications of all of these technologies and their interactions. And unfortunately, that is not true, because they are not superhuman. They are just human, as all of us. And they are resistant because they understand, but we tell them that they cannot admit that they are confused, that they know that they don't know, that they are even in a state of panic. And that is why they are compelled, more often than not, to overreact. Just like your immune system, if you are allergic to nuts, will decide to kill you rather than having you eat one. The same way, regulators, for example, in the state of New York, decided they want to have nothing to do with blockchain technology. That it was great to be the financial center of the world for 100 years, but now it's better not to run the risk to reap the benefits of blockchain as we know it, and they put in place legislation where you connect to some of the blockchain solutions, and the alert you get is this platform is unavailable in the following territories: Iran, Syria, North Korea, Cuba, and the state of New York. But if the changes that we are seeing are indeed unstoppable, then panicking is rather useless. Certainly, there is a delicate balancing act. That is what the regulators' challenge is, undeniably, since they have the responsibility of protecting the income, protecting the public. We don't know what their responsibility is, but I can recommend a way of overcoming their pretension of omniscience. They don't know everything. But if they put in place regulations that have built-in sunsetting rules, then they are naturally forcing themselves to go back to the drawing board and to update the regulations as new knowledge becomes available to them and to us. Blockchain has made available something that was mathematically unavailable when the internet was born. The internet came from a research program born at research institutions in the United States and then in Europe. And the people who designed the internet were not really interested in the commercial applications. Only much later at the beginning of the 90s, it became apparent that these commercial applications would be rather important. But then it was too late. The protocols that we put in place supported images, supported hyperlinks, but there was no protocol for payments. That is why, for the past 30 years, we suffered having bolted on, totally unreasonably, a technology that is 70 years old on the internet, with a consequence of vulnerabilities and lack of user-friendliness and all kinds of negative consequences that are totally natural of this very, very suboptimal solution. But today, we have a solution. It is a solution that has not been integrated fully yet. It is a solution that is very cumbersome, certainly not user-friendly, and I have friends who would love nothing more than billions of people using Bitcoin every day, but it is practically not feasible. I am sure that these solutions will evolve. Using cryptocurrencies, using blockchain is going to become more natural for the developers first, and then it will be more natural for the users as well, the consumers, who will be provided very, very friendly solutions. Some of the applications actually, as it is naturally the case, are going to come from unexpected places. If blockchain allows programmable money, the transfer of value without human intervention, then it is absolutely natural that the Internet of Things is its home. That is where the largest opportunities lie. If you think about it, and some of you may have been there, in the 80s we had what we called client-server computing. It was rather laughable. You could scale it to maximum a few hundred nodes. It was extremely brittle. But today, if Google or Facebook or some of the other centralized systems become unavailable on the east coast of the United States, for example, or some other geographical area at a continental level, it is prime time news. It gets announced on television, oh my God, Google is unavailable. That is how much we have progressed. Be ready for the next leap in the robust, reliable level of our computing infrastructure. The only analogy I can find is to think about your cells in our biological systems, in our bodies. Trillions of cells are doing their job day in, day out, producing proteins, communicating with each other in a totally decentralized manner with absolute reliability, and they have been doing it for 1 billion years, or actually 4. That is what we are going to achieve with blockchain technology. And we are doing it in completely new ways. When an alchemist would play around with lead in order to produce gold, and there would be mercury in the middle that turns out to be poisonous, and the alchemist died from the consequences of these experiments, his alchemist friend could learn nothing because it was done in secret. And startups used to be that way. As an investor, startups would come to me and somewhat meekly ask, do you mind signing a non-disclosure agreement before I show you my sacred document? We've worked on it so long, the business plan. And I would tell them, no thanks. But today, blockchain projects are proudly open. And the document is still sacred, and we call it the white paper, but anybody can go and point out what are the mistakes. And hopefully the project listens, and they correct and update and continuously share what they learn through the new open business models. And these platforms are not only open, but very naturally interoperable, because the tokens themselves are the viral vectors of interoperability and of diffusion. This openness and this virality and the fact that there are always teams who think they are better than the one that they are copying ideas from, and thousands and tens of thousands of projects are blossoming all over the world in the most unexpected places, and finding some financial resource to try what they want to do are leading to an unstoppably fast evolution of business models that are going to find sustainability in a way that wasn't possible before. When Napster was founded, they were fought to death by the incumbent industry, even if they were ready with a membership service to access millions of songs with a simple monthly payment. And this was at the beginning of the 2000s. Because the Supreme Court made a decision that made it a criminal offense to try to build a business like they tried to build. And it took us 20 years to go back where we started. And now we are so surprised and so in love with an inferior copycat that requires billions of dollars of investment in useless data servers that contain desirable vulnerabilities that force us to cross continents with our private data and come back with some pop music. Now, of course, this wasn't necessarily possible 20 years ago, or not all of it. We didn't have blockchain, we didn't have tokens, just as when the first video conferencing system was launched in 1964, it couldn't succeed. But since then, we've learned a lot. And we know that we can try in a globally interconnected world so much because we have learned how to manage risk, and we have learned how to reap the rewards of failing and failing and failing many times, if needed a million times, because we can develop sustainable new business models, trying not even in series, but in parallel, everything we can. I don't know if you've heard, but there are those that call themselves serial entrepreneurs. I build a business and then I sell it, and then I go back, I do a new business and then I sell it, and maybe 5 times over. There are now those who call themselves parallel entrepreneurs, because rather than going deep in specialization, they go horizontally across, testing many things, not one after the other, at the same time. What is happening is a huge challenge. And some nations are starting to realize how deep this challenge goes. It is not only in the economic sphere. It is not only running the risk of disrupting tens of billions or hundreds of billions or trillions of dollars of incumbent businesses, driving them to extinction. It runs the risk of being rather unbalancing to existing power structures that are entrenched and have missiles and have nuclear bombs. The force with which these entrenched power structures are going to resist change is not only going to come through regulation or misguided actions, it may come with violence. But my biologically programmed optimism shouldn't represent the only perspective. Obviously, there can be naysayers, as long as they don't deny reality. When something is evidently true, everybody should recognize it. When a revolution starts, those who are denying its reality should be called out as belonging to an unhealthy, maladaptive group of fanatically skeptical. I have friends who love to dream big. They are dreaming of colonizing the moon, Mars, opening human outposts on the moon, going to mine asteroids. And it is one of my favorite examples. When people tell me, oh, I don't believe in the blockchain tokens, it's all just a fad. I tell them, yeah, that's right. You may be actually right. It could be a fad. You know, we have banknotes. They are hundreds of years old technology. We have checkbooks. We have credit cards. So when we have swarms of intelligent robots mining the asteroids and coming to consensus how to allocate resources of transportation, communication, computation, are they going to use credit cards, checkbooks, or banknotes to make sure that everything works out? And I don't know whether they will use Bitcoin or Ether, if they will still exist, but I am pretty sure that it is going to be a technology that incorporates the principles that I gave you today. And I am pretty sure that the degrees of freedom that we will enjoy, both as civilization and as individuals, are going to give us incredible choices and opportunities that the cages of the old kind of thinking can and must be broken, and that we can experiment in each of your organizations can experiment with new ideas springing to action right away with no delay, because there are really zero barriers to have fun and to reap the benefits of unbounded opportunities. Thank you.